Hey guys, what's going on? It's Ty the TV Guy back with another Stranger Things video today, where I'll be taking you through my ranking of all 4 seasons that have been released for the show thus far. If you're new to my channel and don't know, Stranger Things is my favorite show. You'll quickly see going through my catalog, it is what I've talked about most extensively on my channel. So of course, I love all the seasons if it's my favorite show. I think it's high quality throughout. But I am going to be kind of nitpicking and making distinctions between the seasons as to why I like others slightly more than the rest. And as always, for more Stranger Things content as we approach the 5th and final season, like this video and subscribe to my channel for more. Alright, so getting into my season ranking, in last, I actually have season 3. Now, this has recently, at least in my mind, flipped with the season that I'll now have in 3rd place, so I kind of knew that they were my bottom 2, just didn't know in what order. In a video I made a long time ago, like 3 years ago, believe it or not, still after season 4 had released, I did have these 2 flipped, but now I am proclaiming season 3 as my least favorite season. There's a few reasons that contribute to this, and they don't include season 3 just being poor or not being entertaining, because I certainly don't think that's true. Season 3 is at its peak just as, if not more, entertaining than any other season. It has the glitz and the glamour. It's bright colors. It's characters doing wild things. It's a big, new, fleshy monster. There's a lot going on in season 3, and it feels like a grand moment, don't get me wrong. But a few elements of the story feel either not as believable as the rest, or just less true to the nature of the show, at least as I love it, in my opinion. What I'm referring to here is, 1, the invasion of the Russians under Hawkins and under the Starcourt Mall specifically to create those huge machines and that huge underground base. Obviously, that seems a bit far-fetched. Once again, I know this is a TV show where supernatural things are happening, but within the universe of this TV show, a lot of the things feel believable. That itself didn't feel the most believable to me, and so it just kind of turns me off to that aspect of it slightly to begin with. And then as far as the creation, the come-up story, or the explanation of the formation of the monster for this season, you know, the human flesh version of the Mind Flayer, essentially, it's also kind of my least favorite season for that aspect of things, you know, the creation of the monster. I don't know, just the spreading through rats thing, and then the molted people kind of marching down like zombies before, they start melting and everything. I don't know. It didn't feel as original to the show as the monster stories of season 1, 2, and 4 do to me. So that knocks it down a rung as well. And not only the concept, but I think the writing within the concept and the first half of season 3 in general related to that Mind Flayer, once again, just isn't as good as the other seasons. Now, season 3 does a lot of things really well, including its closing episode, which I think is arguably the best in the show, rivaling, Dear Billy from season 4 or the conclusion episodes of really every other season as well. But ultimately, I also think that episode suffers from one thing, and it's that the biggest, most climactic moment of that episode is when Hopper dies, and of course he comes back in season 4. Now, I still love that episode, and I don't let the characters coming back like Hopper and Max ruin the moments for me, because I know how I felt at that time especially, and I still think it's good television, and okay, they brought them back, it is what it is. So that doesn't completely devalue season 3 or that last episode for me, but if I'm being honest, it takes it, something away from that moment a little bit, and if that wouldn't have happened, I feel like I would hold it on a higher pedestal, and it's like, wow, this is the last time I saw Hopper. That was crazy. The last point I'll touch on here, because I don't want this to be an extremely long video, but Lucas, Mike, Max, Will, characters like that for the first time in the show, I kind of felt like weren't as good as they were previously. Between seasons 1 and 2, I didn't really feel a huge drop-off for any characters. But down to season 3, I felt like those characters I just named and a few more really kind of dropped off a bit in terms of their prevalence in the show, how necessary they actually were for the storyline, and just, to be honest, how much I liked their presence or how well I thought they were written. And I just think season 3 for a while may have been trying to find its footing in terms of, increasing the scale and scope of the show while still being able to really do well with focusing on the micro relationships and character writing within the plot and storyline as well. But don't get me wrong, there's some amazing action scenes in this season. I absolutely love my favorite characters in this season, Eleven and Hopper, still in prime form. Really like Nancy, really like that whole group with Rob and Steve, Erica and Dustin, even though, like I said earlier, that Russian base thing is a little hard to believe in general. I still liked and enjoyed the entertainment value in that group's scenes and trying to break in down there. So there's a lot to love. only a little bit to dislike, but even a little bit with a show like Stranger Things is enough for it to be at the bottom for me. In third place, I have season 1. Now, like I said, this is the one I kind of flipped with 3. I now think I like it a little better than 3 looking back on things and with more rewatches. And here's why. Of course, season 1 started it all, but I don't like when people just use that as like a blanket and easy way to explain why something is better. Of course, it's why it started, but was the quality still better? Was the writing still better? Were the things that happened overall still more entertaining and fun to watch? I think slightly yes. The thing I always point out that I love about season 1 that just naturally the other seasons can't replicate quite as well. I think season 4 kind of rivals it closely, but it's just that mystery of like not knowing what anything is or what's going on with the characters, especially with someone like Eleven and her powers. At the beginning of the show, we know absolutely nothing about what she's capable of, and then just to see the display of her powers in so many different situations, we get her lifting Mike from that cliff, we get her flipping the van, we get like the first couple minuscule times she uses her powers to stop that fan, or to, push something little over. Even just these little scenes were more shocking back then to us, of course, when season 3 rolls around, it's still cool, still a lot of great uses of her powers, she's doing even bigger things to help the crew, but we already kind of know it's coming. So I just think season 1 is naturally special in that way. And then I also think some of these characters just feel so special and so authentic to what they were originally meant to be. And once again, that's natural because it's season 1. Jonathan, Joyce, even Hopper, even though he's my favorite character overall, I still think he's probably best in season 1. There's just so many characters that I think are perfect for what they're asked to do in season 1. I think the writing is just pristine. The only reason I don't have it higher is because even though there might be a couple plot holes in something like 2 or 4, which are obviously the last couple I have remaining here, I do think that overall they just were a little more entertaining and engaging for me start to finish and had some higher peaks. But season 1 is definitely arguably the most consistent season start to finish. Absolutely no bad scenes, no bad episodes, of course. It's just awesome, and all the characters are as well. So even though I have it at number 3, I can admit that season 1's feeling is never quite recaptured in this show, but I do think some of the new feelings they create later on are slightly better. In second place, I have season 4, the most recent season, which, as I mentioned earlier, is basically going to be 3.5 years old by the time the last season, season 5, comes out. But it's still great to this day. I've rewatched so many times at this point, and I love the entertainment value of the season start to finish. Now, to be fair, I do think this season has a couple of the lowest lows in the entire show, but it also just has so many of those highs that, to me, outweigh it in comparison to seasons like 1 and 3. The lows that I'm speaking of here kind of come in a few different forms. So I do think that season 4, episode 2, Vecna's Curse, is arguably my least favorite episode the show has released so far. We get some of the most inconsequential and cringiest scenes simultaneously in this episode, and it's just not one that I really enjoy all that much upon rewatch, once again, in comparison to the rest of Stranger Things. I also can admit that the whole California storyline does feel tremendously underwhelming to me, including Jonathan, Argyle, Will, and Mike. Once again, the word I would use to describe their role throughout the season is inconsequential. I just think that for a span of so many episodes, they aren't really doing that much. Their involvement isn't all that intriguing, and I'm just kind of waiting to get back to the other scenes, which is never how you want to feel when watching a show. So I think season 4 has those weaknesses, but outside of that, there's just so much good storytelling. There's a good expansion of the Stranger Things universe, diving deeper into Eleven's origin story, which is just a big piece of Stranger Things origin story in general, because Eleven's history and background is what's going to tell us about the Upside Down, probably, about who and why some of these people have powers, how many people were at the lab, which we learned there were a lot more numbers than just 11 and 8, of course. I think outside of that California core that I mentioned there, the characters are all arguably at their best states in season 4 as well. I mean, Steve, Nancy, Dustin, Lucas, Max, don't even get me started with Max. Hopper's still really good, even though he's doing something different. Same with Joyce and Murray, doing something different, but I still really like them. And to me, it's just unrivaled, like, story depth, and once again, getting more of that Stranger Things lore that is all but necessary heading into the final season and trying to wrap up the show and give viewers a holistic view of what it is this universe is and where our characters have been and where they're going. And like I said, I just can't pass up the highs of season 4. I do think it has some of those lows that I've slightly touched on here, but the highs, I mean, the Dear Billy episode is just great altogether, but the running up that hill scene, even though it's gotten so popular and so talked about, I truly think it's deserved. It is that good. The Vecna Henry 1 reveal in episode 7, The Massacre at Hawkins Lab, phenomenal. One of the best plot twists I've seen in TV and the best in the show. Season 4, episode 8, Papa, also extremely underrated. So much action going on there. The California crew becomes useful again, and everybody in Hawkins is gearing up for war with Vecna. And then Piggyback, though I was kind of in the moment slightly underwhelmed with it as a season finale, I still think it's a top 5 to 7 episode in the show's history. And then there's just so many tremendous acting performances in this final season. Sadie Sink, Kayla McLaughlin, Gaten Matarazzo, David Harbour is still killing it as always. I mean, there's just so many people acting spot on, and the story is just getting as interested and convoluted, but in a good way, as ever. And then in first place, I have my favorite season 2 of Stranger Things. Now, I don't want to make this seem like I'm saying this or having this opinion to be different, because I do realize that on the internet, season 2 kind of seems to be the least popular. I think if I watched 10 videos, say right now on YouTube, of people making a similar video to this, it would be ranked in 4th or last place in 7 out of the 10 videos probably. So for whatever reason, the Stranger Things fan base doesn't gravitate to season 2 quite as much as the others. And I realize that if you're looking at all the seasons and kind of breaking them down one by one, which 2 seasons are most similar to each other? I would say season 1 and season 2 for sure, both in how the characters look, because there's less of a real lifetime difference. So like our young kids haven't aged as much between these 2 seasons, and just in the storyline, we're still all in Hawkins. Nobody's moved to California or is over in Russia yet. We don't have this new grandioso mall, or kind of these new elements like the Russians coming into town. It still has that small town feel in season 2, and it's still very focused on Will, even though he's more on screen this time. So I realize maybe the argument is that it's like a copycat of season 1 and a just slightly worse and less mysterious version, which I guess I can see the argument for, but I just don't see it that way when I watch through this season. I think there's new and exciting challenges that our characters face, and the way in which they face them is potentially my favorite in the whole Stranger Things storyline. And kind of my main complaint with season 3, the buildup of the monster surrounding that human flesh version of the Mind Flayer is like the opposite of how I feel about season 2. I think the buildup of the monster and its grip that it has on Will in this second season is so phenomenal and my favorite of any in the show. Even better than Vecna, I think. I love Vecna as a villain the most. I think there's the most behind it, and eventually Vecna becomes the best. But I think like the buildup throughout the season is better with the Mind Flayer and it like possessing Will in season 2 than even Vecna in season 4 in his buildup. Now maybe that's a hot take, but just going through like episodes 3, 4, 5, 6 and seeing how it slowly takes over Will more and more, and how they uncover kind of hints about what is affecting Will and how it's all connected. This is where we actually get to, more of an understanding of like the hive mind and how things are connected. I just love it all, and it feels more Stranger Things than Stranger Things has ever felt to me. That's always how I describe it to my friends and stuff. Like if you want Stranger Things, like if I had to point someone to like Stranger Things at its purest form, I would probably point them in the direction of season 2, episodes 8 and 9. The whole gang is together at the Byers' house. 11 comes back to save the day at the end of episode 8. All the stuff that should happen in Stranger Things happens in that span, and I just think it's great. And then I also think the buildup of the monster, like I already mentioned early in the season, is awesome. So I think there's a great episode run at the end of the season, 6, 8, and 9. And then I think the buildup is great. The characters are all still really likable, enjoyable, and interesting. And then the vibe of the season is just so cool too, and you're getting the introduction of new characters like Max and Billy and Bob, who, of course, we know his fate, but was good while he lasted. Now, of course, I should address the elephant in the room, which is season 2, episode 7, The Lost Sister. And I also have an unpopular opinion on this episode, which is that it's not awful. I guess that's like a hot take to say that. It's not an awful episode, in my opinion. I think it's all right. I don't think it's like the best TV we've ever been gifted, but I think it's okay. I think it's good enough to convey and to get through the developments needed for Eleven's character to come back to Hawkins and to learn more about who she is and what she ultimately cares about. And I think we learned so many things about her. I mean, we learned that she found her home in Hawkins. She said, I need to go home. I can save these people. I know they can't save me, but I'm going to go home anyway. We learned that 11 is truly good on the inside. You know, she's not just staying around our crew because they feed her and they keep her warm with a house. She actually loves them, and she actually loves people. She chose not to kill that man who did her mother wrong, assisting Dr. Brenner in torturing her mother back in the day because she saw that he had a family of kids. I thought that was a powerful moment within Eleven's storyline and getting to understand her. And yes, I know the side characters in this episode were pretty wacky, and I know that this was a major interruption in all of the progress and action that we had in season 2. And so I think that's an appropriate complaint. Like, if you don't like where it was placed within the season, that makes sense to me, and I can honestly agree with that. I do think if they could have somehow moved this up an episode or 2 so that it wasn't interrupting the action between episode 6, The Spy, and episode 8, The Mind Flayer, I think it would have been a lot better like that. But even as it is, yes, I think it's an interruption of the action that I don't prefer, but I think the episode itself is still pretty solid. I don't hate it like everyone else, which I just don't really get. And I do wonder if that episode never existed, if everyone would be as cold on season 2 as they seem to be online. But yeah, the final 2 episodes of this season just peak Stranger Things to me. You ask me, what are my favorite 2 episodes to close any season of the show? Definitely season 2. And I think some of the most epic scenes are created within it, including 11 closing the gate, which I think, despite the CGI and everything not being quite as advanced back then in 2017 or whatever, I think it's still arguably the most visually cool and appealing scenes in the entire show. But there you have it, guys. That is my updated opinion on the ranking of the 4 Stranger Things seasons released thus far. I have season 3 as my least favorite. I have season 1 in third. I have season 4 narrowly in second, behind season 2 as my favorite season, which I know is an unpopular opinion, but I truly do like it the best. If you guys enjoyed this video and want more Stranger Things content as we lead up to the final season, please like this video and subscribe to my channel. I make tons of content and have pretty good insight, as I've seen this show a lot more times than almost anybody. But that's it for today. Let me know your favorite season of Stranger Things in the comments, and until next time, peace out.